Accessing library computer data.
The world doesn't always adhere to logic. And sometimes when you're lost, you're found.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Continuing our coverage of Star Trek Discovery, now in its second season. We're up to the episode called New Eden. It is the second episode of the second season. Aired on January 24th, 2019. Teleplay goes to Vaughn Wilmot and Sean Cochran. Story credit goes to Akiva Goldsman and Sean Cochran. Directed by old Two Takes Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker from TNG. In this episode, a new signal appears, prompting Stamets' emotional return to the mycelial network and leading Burnham, Pike, and Owosekun to a pre-warp planet where they face the complex ethical dilemma. Tilly's over-eagerness lands her in trouble when the planet and Discovery's landing party are threatened. Her curiosity may be the one thing that can save them. We made it through the introduction there, Clay. How are you?
I'm good. It's clear that the producers are responding to the wants and needs of the fans after season one, but they might be going a little too far because now we have two Tillys, which might be a little too much for me.
Well, do you think people were asking for more Tilly? Was that what you're trying to tell me?
I can only assume so because, I mean, she was a very prominent part in the first one, very prominent part in this one, and there's two of her in this one, more or less. And, charming quirkiness can only get you so far.
I know. Story of my life.
Yeah.
Well, I think
it gets me in the door, but it never gets me the job.
That's right. Yeah, it gets you the interview. We're going to be talking about New Eden. It's the second episode. I think I have a lot to say about this one, and I think that this episode will be interesting. Is like a thermometer or however, like you put your thumb in the air to see which way the winds are blowing. But we're going to break it down. We're going to take a break. Play an audio clip. We'll come back and we're going to break down New Eden.
They do not seem to be in any sort of distress, Captain.
Can you trace any warp signatures or starships near the planet?
Not a single one.
I can, however, confirm that based on audiophonic degradation, the transmission has been broadcasting on a loop for 200 years.
That's before warp was even invented.
Somebody want to tell me how they got here?
Okay, Clay. So this is one of those episodes where fan reaction has been very positive to it for the most part. I think that I think I'm really starting to see the schism in fan reactions to this show. And I think I need our discussion here to tell me whether or not this is a very good episode or just an okay episode, because I walked away from it last night going, wow, like I was really impressed by that.
Yeah.
I watched it again this morning and I thought about it a little bit more, and I think I'm less impressed with it, but I don't think it's bad. But I'm very interested to see what you thought of it, and if you can sort of help me flesh out my own feelings about it.
Well, I thought it was pretty good. I liked it. It was, it's interesting looking at this show because I feel like they have so far in these first two episodes righted the ship pretty dramatically. I don't want to say it's fully course corrected, but I feel like they are on their way. But that being said, I don't know that this in a vacuum is a fantastic episode. It just feels, it's a good episode that feels like a Star Trek episode. Mm-hmm. From the opening sequence up through the end of the cold open, when they went into the cold open, I actually kind of was like, oh, I'm okay. I'm in. That was a Star Trek opening.
Yes. I would say an extremely unfamiliar opening. You know what I mean? Like the oh my God, a planet full of humans that we can't explain how we got here is a very Star Trek-y thing that they've done many, many times. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And I feel like this felt like a more traditional Star Trek episode, and I will say that for better or worse. And it feels like they the course correction might be coming off as more impressive than it is. Although I do think they are continuing to be better at integrating their larger story with smaller episodes. I think this is another one.
Yeah, I thought this episode was a very good example of that, even if I have some problems with it later on. But it felt very much like an episodic TV show that was using the serialized storyline to feed into what was happening in the episode.
Yes, yeah, and I thought that was great. I really liked the way they did that. I think going forward, they might need to get away from asteroid-based problems. Yeah, because this is 2 episodes in a row that involve some sort of asteroid. I mean, maybe that's a larger thing that's gonna, I don't know, just indicative of how this whole thing's gonna work with this alien or whatever. But both of these episodes had asteroid-based problems that needed to be solved. Yeah, I thought it was good. I would take this episode over pretty much any episode from the first season. I think it's a better version of that Saru short that they did.
Yep.
But I do think there are still problems that they haven't quite worked out yet, as far as like, they had the A plot and the B plot working, but the A plot never really felt it felt really quick.
Yes.
It was just sort of like dip down to the planet, come back, and then just dip down again to talk to that one guy. There wasn't really so much conflict there, like there was a little bit. You get some good stuff, some good conversations between Pike and Burnham, but they don't spend a lot of time there. It's not really super strong as far as plots go. And the B plot is, whatever. It's a generic, we have the ticking clock extinction level event. We have to do a donut in space. I don't even think they did it. They didn't really do a donut. That didn't look like a donut to me.
Well, in the last episode, I mentioned that the music was emotionally manipulative a little bit. Did you notice the audio drop when they say extinction level event?
I didn't actually, no.
Okay. When she says that, they play a very dramatic beat to I assume tell incredibly stupid people that an extinction level event is a very bad thing to happen to you. And that's kind of a minor point, but I think I think maybe my biggest problem with the episode is I think that the A storyline, which is Pike and Burnham on the planet, and the B storyline, which is the Discovery crew trying to figure out how to stop the asteroids from hitting the planet, there is a far too great of an imbalance, and they tried to make them equal amount of screen time for some reason. Mm-hmm. The B plot in this needed to be 2 scenes maximum and maybe 5 minutes of screen time, and it's way more than that. And it's stupid. Not stupid, but it's basically just technobabble with characters running around on the bridge. And it's not altogether novel or anything. It doesn't really tie in. It feels like it's just should have been relegated to the background while being used to give a little bit of cushion between the scenes on the planet where they needed to make more drastic cuts, like they had to cut between scenes down there. So let's go back up to the ship just to see what's going on, then come back immediately. I think that what I do like about this, or maybe I'll start off with the sort of the thing that annoys me about this one, is that after we watched the first episode, there was a lot of feedback, and there seems to be this sort of battle about how you interpret this show. Whether or not you view Star Trek as more important for the franchise, or whether you view it as this series needs to stand on its own and be its own good thing. And I think that the course corrections that they're doing to make this more of a Star Trek feel very obvious to me. It's clear that that's what they're trying to do. And I think that I appreciate that on a lot of levels, but there's this tiny, small bit where the A plot here felt so underwhelming to me about what they could have done with this. This was maybe had potential to be the greatest Prime Directive story I think that the series has ever done. And they dropped the ball quite a bit, like pretty aggressively, and not in a way that the episode is bad, but more that it's almost like they took a childish approach to what could have been a really mature discussion about this, and they just gave up on it.
There's no sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's no character interaction with anybody. Like they don't they spend the entire time in that church, and then they go to that one, the blessed ceremony of exposition.
Yes, by the All-Mother. Yes, where she just explains everything that's going on.
And, to kind of jump off of what you're saying before about the amount of time spent, I would have been much happier if they spent more time actually exploring these ethical questions that they set up, and then kept the stuff on the Enterprise, on the Discovery to maybe just Tilly's, weird whatever's going on with her.
Yeah.
And completely got rid of the extinction level event thing. Like that I feel like you could have, there's enough possibility for drama and tension in the plot you're setting up that you don't need Cataclysm to beef it up.
Right, because what they're doing here is, we complained at the end of the first episode where I mentioned that it doesn't seem like Burnham and Pike getting along with each other seems to be without dramatic drive to it. Mm-hmm. I see what they're doing here now, and it's interesting. And I knew going in that the season was going to be about faith versus reason, and this seems like the first episode that they're really stepping into that. And what I love about this, and I continue to love Anson Mount, is Pike, and I continue to love Pike. They're drawing up Pike being slightly more faith-based or spiritual than Burnham, who's the scientist on the crew. And what I really appreciated is that season one, if this was season one, Pike would have strode in and said, let me tell you that Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, has sent us to do these things. They don't do that. He's much more subtle in this one. And he has some great lines about, he has the thing about, the original quote was, any technology, sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which is turned into any extraterrestrial intelligence is indistinguishable from God. And he says that to Burnham. I really like what they're doing here. The problem is they have this conflict between Pike and Burnham on the planet, which is about faith versus reason. And on top of that, they stick the Prime Directive. And as far as I can tell, they're not really related to each other. And it feels, this all comes into my big point, and then I'll throw it to you. My big problem with the way that they're course correcting is that it kind of feels like they're sledgehammering Star Trek topics into something that my perspective would be, if you want to modernize the show, you can't just do this kind of direct homage to it. Like, you have to sort of build off of it, but then make it your own thing. And my frustration was that they had this really interesting faith versus reason thing, and the ethics of whether or not you tell this Jacob guy about what's going on because of the Prime Directive. And instead it comes off as very flippant. And like, by the end of it, I'm not sure how Burnham convinced Pike to go against the Prime Directive. Like, she doesn't make a good argument for him. But he has to go back because the story demands that he goes down there and talks to that guy. But that's it. I'll let you talk, and then I'll sort of fill in the blanks about where I'm thinking on this.
Well, the discussion they have that makes him go back down is, she kind of like says that their larger mission supersedes the Prime Directive. Right?
Which is what anti-Pike believes, though. Pike believes that the Prime Directive is. Well, see, this is the...
And also it's, Prime Directive means Prime Directive.
Right. It's in the name. General.
Although it does follow the
General Order 1.
It does follow the very clearly established history of talking about the Prime Directive and why you can't violate it, and then just throwing it out the window. So,
yes.
But what I understand what you're saying, where Pike and Burnham are kind of coming at it from two different angles, and they don't really find a third solution. No. He just sort of says, yeah, I guess you're right. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it's kind of a third solution, because he does go back down and talk to just that one guy. Although if I was that one guy, even if I said, no, this is enough for me to know that you people are out there, that would drive me fucking crazy. to have this piece of advanced technology that exists now, and have no possible way to expand on it or figure out how it works. And then, I mean, how's he going to feel that coming winter when people are dying from exposure or something, and he's got a fucking flashlight that works, but the fucking Star Trek Discovery wouldn't save their people? Like I think that's where the core of that argument and that discussion could have gotten really interesting.
Yeah.
Is if you really get into the meat of, well, what does the Prime Directives here still apply if it's humans?
Yes.
I like what he says, that like technically they're a pre-warp civilization still, but at the same time they're also people from Earth, and you would think people from Earth would want to know that Earth still exists,
right?
So it's a good discussion to have.
It's a question of, like, if you wanted to get the nuts and bolts, they should be having a discussion of what does it take to be considered a new culture. You know, is it just separation from your group for a while? Does that make you a new culture, or is there something else? But I even think that what I really like about this episode is that it's probably the most interesting and direct conflict that they've ever had about the Prime Directive. And I think that Burnham makes really excellent points against Pike, even though Pike does not come off as foolish, really. Pike,
right.
What the problem I guess that I have is that I feel that they're trying to link Pike's spiritual faith, which he's showing hints of in this episode, with a kind of faith in the Prime Directive, maybe. Like they're trying to link those two things. And that's what makes the ending so egregious to me, is that it's not egregious, but I think that the writing kind of stumbles a few points in this one. And it's unfortunate because I really like the concept of what they're doing. But Pike giving into his faith at the end doesn't work for me. I feel Burnham should be the person down there talking to that guy. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, that would make character sense as far as, like, you know, because theoretically the arc of this, well, that's not fair to say. I was going to say theoretically the arc of the season is Burnham learning to bend her hard and fast science rules, even though technically she's not wrong. I mean, that's the thing that's the part I find really fascinating.
I think that's what they're doing a good job of here, is that they're actually, neither side seems to be wrong, because Burnham needs to open her mind to something bigger than the raw science, and Pike treating it as if it can't be explained scientifically is also incorrect. So they're both kind of wrong in how they're looking at things. Yeah,
and I think you know, I think you can have Burnham go down there and be that character without it coming across as like, oh, well, science didn't win this battle. Because that's the thing that I don't know if Pike. I mean, it remains to be seen. But I'm not seeing Pike as specifically spiritual as much as he's open to suggestion. Like he's more of like, he seems more of like an agnostic, where it's like he's there to counterpoint Burnham, where Burnham is so hard and fast. He's Mulder and she's Scully, essentially,
sure.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Where he doesn't necessarily believe in God, or he's not necessarily Catholic, but
yes, he has no institutional faith.
Yeah, he's open to the possibility of where this stuff might come from and how it might synthesize, whereas Burnham is very much, nope, it's this only, and it can't be anything other than this. And so seeing those two kind of like mesh with each other is going to be interesting. And I think, like you said, they're doing a pretty good job so far.
See, I'd put a little...
But I guess, sorry, just one more thing. I guess who goes down to the planet at the end comes down to whose episode is this? Like, do you consider this more of a Pike episode or more of a Burnham episode? Or is it neither? Is it both?
I think it's neither. I think it plays off. The problem I have with Pike going down, like...
Pike going down seems sneaky.
Well, I feel it's a betrayal of everything that Pike has been talking about to that point. Like, I don't feel that Burnham convinced him at the end that this is the right thing to do. Burnham going down, because let me just lay out what I'm seeing as the issue here. So there's this planet where there are these people who are pre-Prime Directive, like they don't know if they should talk to them or not. They are humans. They meet one of them who seems to know that there is life outside of what they've been taught through this New Eden stuff. And Burnham is like keeping these people in the dark about what the facts are is a wrong thing to do to them. And Pike is more of the hard line. Well, we can't tell them because they're pre-warp. These are the rules. This is the faith that we have in the system. And Jacob, to me, the black guy that they meet down on the planet, what I was talking about with childish stuff, Jacob had real potential to be this incredibly tragic arc in this episode where he is the person who's he's basically Galileo. He could have been in this, where he sees the truth in something, but he's been raised in this fundamental religious society that's out to punish them for what it is. And Burnham desperately wants to tell him about what's going on, and maybe she does, but he can't leave. And Pike would be the one saying that you can't do this because this is the faith in the system that we have. And at the end, it's like the Jacob would learn the truth of the situation, but his environment would punish him for it. And Burnham would have this ethical dilemma about whether or not it was right to tell him that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
They don't really do that. They pay lip service to the problem, but instead at the end, the laughable part of it is at the end. I'm using harsh language, but the laughable part at the end is when Jacob is just like, "Oh shit, you told me the truth. Well, I'm over it now. Like, I don't need to look into this anymore. That was ridiculous."
Yeah. That's what I was saying. It's like if you learned that information, like, let's look at it from the point of view of what Pike's saying about that Arthur C. Clarke quote, right? If you do the extrapolate that out, what happens in this episode is God shows up on the planet and tells this guy, yes, God does exist, God does have powers, but we can't actually do anything to help you. See ya, and then fucks off.
Yes,
like that would drive you absolutely fucking crazy. Yes. You know, and I think you're right. I think there's so much more potential as to what the actual narrative arc to that story is, because as of now there really is none, right? It's just sort of, it's kind of they just, one guy finds out and nobody else changes their minds about anything. Like there's no interaction with anything to establish a story arc of how this civilization might react to this knowledge or anything like that. It's very behind closed doors.
The drama comes from the fact that as a Star Trek fan, you're supposed to know that the Prime Directive debate is important. You know what
That's
I mean?
true. That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
So
because that's a really good point. I think the biggest problem is that they don't explore why violating the Prime Directive is bad.
Right.
And that's kind of the key to making a Prime Directive story work.
Right, exactly. And I think that my Galileo thoughts for Jacob would have been heart-wrenching, where it's like, do you tell this?
You just want to see him burned at the stake at the end of the episode.
I just wanted anything than him being like, well, I'm going to shut this shit down now and just go about my life is fine. Like,
if anything, I would be like, well, I guess I could probably use this new technology to boost my signal.
And I mean, I think the episode is siding on the side of science because he literally illuminates the darkness when he's given this technology from Pike, like the windows light up and everything, and everyone comes out and looks at it. But I think that the thing about what the hell was I doing? The Prime, I can't remember what I was going to say. The Prime Directive aspect of it. Kickstart my memory. Do you have anything you wanted to say about this? I feel I had a point, but I can't remember it now.
Well, I think having Burnham be the one to go back down at the end is probably the right move. If you're going to keep the story as it is, because Pike, in that way you can actually have them both maintain their same course, but actually have dramatic action happen.
Yep.
Because as far as Pike's concerned, they're done there, and as far as Burnham's concerned, she has done her part of the job, which is to go down and be honest with this guy, but also get information because of it. And then, that establishes some tension later when it's like, Burnham, where did you get this helmet from?
Right.
Well, sorry, sir, but I felt like blah, blah, blah. And I mean, her character is supposed to be the one who's always kind of going over the captain's helmet, so to speak, Yes.
She seems to be driven by, I guess at this point you could say that the Burnham character seems to be built to challenge sort of foundational understandings of Starfleet in a way, like with the war thing about like we go outside chain of command in season 1 and we cause this war because we think this is the right thing to do. Here it's, we don't obey the Prime Directive because, and this is my opinion, like the Prime Directive is a pretty immoral directive, in my opinion. Like the show should point out how wrong this is in a lot of cases, where other series like TNG tried to stay too true to the thought behind it and ended up with weird episodes where like they're looking at a colony of people and a comet's about to obliterate them, and they're like, well, we can't save these people because there's nothing worse than them knowing that there's someone else out there in the galaxy. Like that's the logic of the Prime Directive. And Burnham challenging that really makes a lot of sense, and it's because they're human. And it's like, this guy, what good does it do to hide truth from people is basically Burnham's argument. Like, why not illuminate them and let them know what's going on? And I think they just kind of dropped the ball with that story on it instead of. So the problem there is that I wanted them to go really deep, and they were so close. They were so close to doing something with it. And instead, what they did, to tie it back into my original point, is that if they're course correcting, I do think there is a slight argument to the fact that they're course correcting too much towards fan service. Like I want a twist on what they're doing here. I don't want just them going down and having a bland Prime Directive argument. I want them to modernize that point of view.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. We, excuse me. On the Deep Space Nine show, we talk about how there are some characters that are written as TNG characters who are kind of, specifically Bashir, who is used as kind of a counterpoint to the new way that the writers are handling things in Deep Space Nine.
He always thinks in the best terms. He's the optimist.
Yeah. I feel like Burnham should be a Deep Space Nine character put in a TOS world.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Essentially.
Yep.
Where she has more, for lack of a better term, modernized viewpoints, like you're saying, on certain things, and challenges the established ideas in a way that still maintains what Star Trek is, but makes you think about these things in a new way. I totally agree with you. I would like to see less hey, this is the Star Trek you remember, and more, hey, this is the Star Trek you remember.
Right, exactly. And I think that they're right to make these course corrections that they're doing to make it feel less like season one and more like this stuff. And I think they're really succeeding in the serialized tying into the episode nature. I think they're really doing well in that regard. Like these two episodes have both been strong in that way. I just don't want them, to be so in awe of what the fans want and what the previous series are, that they forget that they're trying to make a new series in a modern age, like after all these other Trek series. Like in the argument of canon versus fundamentally strong storytelling, I'm completely okay with them breaking canon occasionally if they want to get the series to be on its own legs. I agree with that 100%.
While I agree with what you're saying, I think there's only so much grief we can give them about this stuff, because we are 5 seasons deep into arguably the best Star Trek series ever right now, right?
Yeah.
With a writing team that has more or less been there from the start. A lot of those people were there on TNG as well, I think. Is that true?
Yep. Yeah,
so
they were. Yep.
You're dealing with a writing team that's made up of people who have been living and breathing Star Trek for like 8 to 10 years. Here, we don't have that. So I can give this episode more of a pass as the writing team still trying to find their sea legs as far as Star Trek goes. So while I don't disagree with you, but I wonder if we should cut them a little bit more slack, where it's like, okay, they seem to be getting closer. They're going to figure it out. And at the same time, I agree with what you've said previously, which is in the modern era of TV, you have to be better sooner, right? But if this is a show where CBS is going to invest in it the way they've invested in Star Trek of the past, which is like, just do it, and we'll see what happens.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Yep. If they're going to allow them the time to figure it out, then I think they're on the right track. I think they've got a ways to go, probably. But before they're making like the groundbreaking modern Star Trek that everybody wants to see. But I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I'm harping on my negatives of this one just because I'm more frustrated by this episode than I was the first one. I feel like this one, I really saw potential for it to be like really interesting, and it doesn't quite get there because it's a little bit hesitant to really embrace what a changed series could be in this way. But I think that the writing staff is also splintering. They keep plucking people out of the original team to move off onto these like billion side stories that they've got. So I don't know if the writing team here is ever going to be stable enough to really work. But I think that I liked this episode, and I'm more just being harsh on it just because I think I'm really sort of defining where my point of view of criticism of this series comes from. And I think that I love all the changes that they've made in the second season and moving it in a new storytelling method where things feel slower, things feel more thought out. However, I don't want them to get too much into the first episode where they're like, hey, that's the Enterprise, the greatest ship that's ever existed in this franchise. Let's talk about it. And this, where it's just the Prime Directive is just there to be talked about because fans know that you're supposed to talk about the Prime Directive, and they don't link that story in any interesting, tragic way. Like the tragedy of Jacob is really going to hang on me. And I've now remember what I was going to talk about. The problem with New Eden, right, is that if you want to set up this story, New Eden, and they kind of hint at this when they first arrive, right? They arrive at that church and they start reading the patched together Bible that they've got. And Pike is sort of Pike is blown away by the violence of it. This religion should not be a hippie commune that this planet has built. This should be to make Jacob's story make sense, that should be a horrible place to live in New Eden. You know what I mean?
Can you elaborate more? I'm not sure I follow.
So if you have all of the on the first hand, it's bizarre that they have basically every religion somehow made it into this place and they've combined them. However, I feel that if you're combining these disparate points of view, that there should be a little bit of chaos in this environment that they've made. Like, in order to survive, they patch together this belief system, but it's not reasonable. It doesn't look towards science. It doesn't look towards self-improvement. It punishes non-believers. If you have that and you put Jacob into this situation, who's the kid looking at the stars, dreaming of better places and things to be, Burnham gets extra turmoil in her decision if she wanted to tell him what the truth is.
Right.
It's like, is he happy in ignorance, or is telling him the truth going to set him free but potentially be a death sentence for him? I think that's a really interesting way to go with it, and they don't do it. But I think that New Eden comes across as too much of like a Amish hippie commune type thing, and I don't know if that serves the story. Yeah,
I don't know, because it is by the nature of the civilization one that is founded on literal salvation, not like any sort of like theoretical salvation. It's they were literally delivered by a godlike creature from war to a peaceful new place. And I wonder if having a civilization break off of grow from that ends up being a shitty place to live is really, really cynical. However, I will say it does break the expected trajectory of something like this in Star Trek, where it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's New Eden seems to be a pretty sweet place to live, except for they don't have any lights, really. So
can you, in your point of view, what is Pike's concern about the Prime Directive here? Is it literally just this is the rule and we're supposed to follow it? Like, I don't think Pike ever gives his point of view as to why the Prime Directive applies here.
Well,
or why he thinks it's important, rather.
I would agree with you. I don't think he totally voices it, other than Prime Directive is the Prime Directive and must be followed.
The faith argument that I was talking about.
Yeah, I think you could see it as him not seeing, looking at this society that's based on faith, not seeing anything inherently wrong with the way they're living, and so making the judgment call, why should we destroy their faith system? Why, because by proving that they are who they are, you could make an argument that it's going to shatter their, belief system. I don't know if that's true. That would have been an interesting argument for him and Burnham to have, I think. But But yeah, in the show itself, he doesn't really give much of a reason other than Prime Directive must be followed.
Yes, which I would have been fine with as a faith argument. I just feel that it doesn't seem linked enough to me, and we've gone over this, so I'm not going to keep going on it. But Pike sticking to that because of it's an act of faith that he believes in the system and he believes in the stuff that he's thought. I feel that would really add something to it. And his turn at the end doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't think Burnham would convince Pike of anything at that end of the story. But we've talked enough about that. I think that I did have some other notes I just wanted to go across with. Which
before
would be,
we get into that super quick, I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah.
They do. I kind of feel like they dropped the ball a little bit on the ending as well, because they essentially do violate the Prime Directive before Pike goes back, because the elder or whoever that woman is sees them get beamed out. And so she's like, "Oh, the angel has come back to save us," and that's basically confirming exactly what Pike says at the beginning of the episode about science, extraterrestrial science, being indistinguishable from God. So I kind of feel like there's some necessity to have either Pike or Burnham be like,
clarify things.
Fuck,
right.
We can't just pretend. We can't let them think that we're just gods. So we have to go down and we have to tell them the truth. Yes,
and I'd agree with that. I think that's accurate. I think that the point of the problem with the Prime Directive is this: if they observe something like that and you allow it to continue, you've caused damage through your inaction towards them. That's why the Prime Directive doesn't work. If you're causing unethical things to happen because of your inaction, I think that's not an ethical rule to follow.
Right.
While understanding why they did it in the first place.
Yeah.
I guess we can talk about the Tilly side plot, the B plot. I mean, the doing the donut with the asteroids is whatever. It takes up a great amount of time. Mm-hmm. I'm having a real hard time with Tilly so far.
So we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, and I think it's even heavier here, which is I really don't like this thing where, I mean, Burnham always being right, whatever. She's your main character. Tilly always being right seems not the right way to go with her. Mm-hmm. She's always right. It's only been 2 episodes, whatever. But
she's the Wesley Crusher character.
Yeah, she's like her solutions are always correct, and that's not that in and of itself is not a problem. But the fact that her solutions are superseding the knowledge of an entire starship full of people,
of specialists,
of specialists, is kind of all right. We're giving her a little bit too much invulnerability here. I don't want her to be a dunce or like a fuck up or anything, but I would find, so you've got your Burnham character who is your strong-willed, lots of opinions, lots of I shouldn't say opinions. What's the word?
Feels very strongly in her opinions would be the way that I'd describe Burnham.
Yeah, and has a lot of things that she lives by that is hard and fast for her, to for better or worse, and that's what kind of makes her an interesting character, right? Or theoretically, anyway. With Tilly, she's an ensign who is trying to become an officer, but she's fucking smarter than everybody on the ship. What is the interesting character growth for her if she's already smarter than everybody? I understand that she's driven by wanting to help Stamets. That's really all she's driven by at this point, is wanting to help Stamets, and that ends up having her fall ass backwards into solutions for other things that are happening.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
But I feel like I would be much more interested in her character, same way she's played. I think the actress is playing her. I think she's good. I would be much more interested in her if she was actually kind of hitting roadblocks or struggling, right. or not just being right all the time, it feels like, the thing that I love about Doctor Who is that the character of the Doctor 9 times out of 10 solves the problem by just outthinking the bad guy, which is great when you've got so many other shows that are about, who can punch harder, who can shoot people sooner. It's nice to have a character who's like, no, I'm just going to outwit you. And that's great for that character because that character is surrounded by outward forces, more violent forces poking in on her. So she has to figure out a novel way to defeat these violent forces without herself becoming violent, which I find very interesting because she's strong enough and smart enough that she could become violent very intensely. And that's part of the backstory of the characters. She did that once and she wiped out an entire race of people.
Yeah.
That I find interesting. There's a conflict there that's at the heart of why she chooses to do what she does. With Tilly, it's like having Doctor Who. It's like having the Doctor on a ship full of other doctors. You know what I mean? Where everybody there is trying to find the simple solution, the non-violent, smart solution, but she's just doing it better than everybody else, and I don't find that interesting at all.
It's very unsatisfying, too, because it's all technobabble.
Yes.
She just talks nonsense, and then they're like, okay, that amount of nonsense that you just spoken was better than any of our nonsense that we've been saying over here previously. I have a big... I think I saw some other review that I brought up that I thought brought up a good point. I think Tilly is the primary issue character in this, is that the show tends to believe at this point that the drama they have has been earned, like that the audience should buy into the struggles of these characters more than we do because we haven't really been invested in them and in stories that are good enough to get invested in how they feel. Burnham's an example. Tilly's the prime one because Tilly, they have the scene here where Saru's like, you what have you done, you idiot? And she's like, am I kicked out of the command training program? And he goes, no. Like I don't give a fuck about that command training program. Like this, they just mention it as though if I'm supposed to care that she's a part of it, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't amount to anything because her technobabble is going to save the day.
Yeah, I think the problem with her is, I feel like from the characters that we've had established so far, you can kind of extrapolate out the part each one of them plays as in the body of the discovery, So like Burnham is the strong will. Pike is
Pike is the heart.
Oh well, see, I was going to say Pike is more of what is. I was basically, this is going to be a roundabout way of me saying Tilly should be the heart.
Oh,
right.
Sure. I prefer Pike's heart to Tilly's heart. If that Tilly would be like the id sort of. Does that make you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Doesn't mean she's bad, but it's more the uncontrolled. Where Pike would be like Pike's sort of the ego or the super ego.
Yeah.
Tilly's kind of the id, although not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It's just she's more driven by emotion.
Yeah. I would go with that. But my point being, it still falls into the same thing. I think she is too much being made the brains of the ship, and you've got four other characters who are also the brains of the ship. So she has to be like a bigger brain. It's I don't know. I just find her character. I think the actress is good. I think the character in her portrayal is good. She's fun. She's funny. She's quirky. I just think they're making her too advanced.
Yeah, I would say that I think her performance is a little too over the top, and that she seems like a cartoon character compared to the others who come in.
Yeah, but whatever.
I think I would change that slightly. That'll bring us to who I think is by far the weakest character at this point, which is Stamets.
All he's done so far is like look off into the distance and then go like, huh? What? Yeah, no, I can help with that.
First, I'm not convinced Anthony Rapp is a good actor because 90% of his acting seems to be his eyebrows. He just like raises his eyebrows up and down. Very,
hey man, film acting, small movements.
And Stamets is a character.
Also, sorry, I was drinking water when you said that.
Sure. Wah, wah.
I think director Jonathan Frakes would like to have a word with you.
All these characters start swinging their legs over things. Stamets has Stamets seems only to exist at this point because he needs to draw the connection to the Spore network that is basically being shown to be Afterlife at this point. Like, he needs to exist because Culber is there and he has a relationship with Culber, even though they didn't really establish that or anything, but they're clinging to that as his whole thing of being. So here's my problem with Stamets in this episode that I think is probably, it seems like it's a holdover of the weakness of writing in season 1. They open it with his scene with Tilly where they're like, we have to get you back into the Spore thing. He's like, my God, I'll do this one time, but it's like, this is too horrible. I don't want to go back in there. It's like, I want this part of my life to be over. I can't stand seeing Hugh for the potential that I'll see Hugh when I go in there. And you're like, that makes sense. Like, he shouldn't want to go in there, but he's going to do it because the greater good needs him to jump to this far planet. Later in the episode, when the asteroids come in, they're like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
He suggests jumping.
Yeah.
He's the person who's like, let me jump and I'll save the day. And he runs off in excitement to save the day. Shouldn't other character be like, Stamets, we need you to get back in the goddamn machine, and him being really hesitant to do it? Or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, that doesn't make any narrative sense.
No, but that's why Stamets suffers, because Stamets has no point. So the writers just kind of stick him into places, and it doesn't really work all the time because he's only clinging around or hanging around. Isn't he the chief engineer or something? Like, shouldn't he be up to things? But he doesn't seem to have a point on the show.
Yeah, I don't even really know what his. Well, you know why I don't know what he does is because I feel like Tilly's doing all the stuff he should be doing.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I think you're
he
right.
kind of gravely nods along with her suggestions as though he's the final voice of approval.
Yeah, it's like if in Wrath of Khan, Scotty's fucking nephew there was doing all the work and Scotty was just like staring off into the distance for the whole movie. But yeah, he doesn't really have a place other than to be like this beacon for moroseness at the moment. And I kind of I don't like that they are making him just paralyzed by grief.
Half the time.
Yeah. It feels like he should be more of a work through it type of grieving person. You know what I mean? I don't know.
He's an engineer. Like, he should throw himself into his work or something. You know, just like.
Yeah, because I mean, like, or if you're going to have him be this grief-stricken character, right? Go all the way with it and be like, yeah, well, he was going to leave because he can't do anything because he's paralyzed by grief, but we're on a different mission now, so he's stuck here. So he has to work with us. He has to do his job, or we have to put him in quarters or something.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree. And the last point, I think, let's touch on the Red Angel before we call it a day.
I have one more thing I want to talk about. We can either do it now or after. I don't
care. Sure. Do it if it's character related. Might as well get it out of the way now.
So this was just a little tiny moment, but I feel like what they chose to have Saru say here has a lot of weight in the overall franchise, which is it's after Tilly blows herself up. And she wakes up in sick bay, and he's kind of chastising her. And he says, before we care for others, we must first care for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to have him say in the grand scheme of things, as a very heavy counterpoint to the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. I don't know if they intended that.
It struck me as a very modern take on self-care.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
When he said it, I was like, I think I know what he's saying. Like, I don't think they intended him to just like completely counterpoint the most with great power
enduring
comes
ethos.
Great responsibility of the Star Trek world. But I couldn't not think of that. And
it's also a military ship, basically. Like, that's the antithesis of a military point of view.
Yeah. And, I was thinking, though, maybe it's a good insight to his character, because, like, if you look at Saru and the way that he left his planet, that I could feel that, I could see that being rationalization for the way that he did that. Because
I think it's a Saru point of view. That makes sense to me. I don't know if it really, I mean, you can say that he's maybe not a stock standard character, but it is glaring in how it contradicts what has generally been seen as the logical way for the show to pursue things. But it makes sense for Saru, I think, to be that character.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing to have him say But yeah, that's all.
Red Angel. The strangest thing about this, we're going to get more into this, obviously. I don't think there's enough evidence that, and I don't really want to sort of like speculate on what this is because I don't think I know what I'm talking about. But most interesting thing about this, Burnham has a line at the end where she says, she's talking to Pike and she says, "I saw the angel and I have to tell you it was beautiful." Mm-hmm. That angel has looked nothing but like pants shittingly terrifying to me every time that... I thought it's like it's appearing in war, it's appearing in things blowing up, and it looks like it has these horrible claw wings. Like it looks terrifying.
It looks like a Judas Priest album cover. I'm thinking of one in particular, but I can't remember exactly. It's one of the more recent ones. If I Google it, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, it's the name of the album is Angel of Retribution. That's what it looks like.
What do you think? Do you have any thoughts about the Red Angel? I don't really have any. I thought it was useful to be a counterpoint for Pike and Burnham to talk about it and their like interpretation on how they feel about life, as it seems this episode is trying to say. But outside of that, I thought it was a great ending. I thought watching that helmet cam was a great way to end the episode. Mm-hmm. But do you have any thoughts about the Red Angel?
Not really, not yet. I think it's I think it's going to be a disappointing payoff when they reveal whatever they're going to reveal. That's just the nature of how these things work, unfortunately. Unless it's Commander Riker with a light behind him. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's created enough mystery to being more engaging than I thought it was going to be. Because the fact that the angel seems to actively be taking action in certain places.
It's initiating all of these episodes, basically, by its actions are causing the crew to go there.
Yeah, it's more engaging to me that way than, say, like the Final Frontier way of handling this stuff.
Just sitting at the center of the galaxy,
like
right? And you have to go find him.
It's less musing about the nature of God than it is, oh, well, there's this thing that is appearing as a godlike being, but it is actively engaging us and clearly trying to direct us. What could its purpose actually be? I find that more engaging than just like, why or what is,
Yeah, I'd agree. Anyway, we've talked for a while. Let's take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back, give our final thoughts about New Eden.
I lied. Protect the others from the truth. The truth is, you were right about us. I know what it's like to live with doubt, and I guess I didn't want that for you.
How'd you get here? Beam of light?
Yes, actually. It's called a transporter. It converts a person or an object into an energy pattern, then beams it to a target where it's eventually reconverted back into matter.
Do you have a ship? Do you, fly, among the stars?
Yeah.
All right, so at this point of the show, I'd usually go for patron thoughts. We don't have any because the show just came out and we're reacting fresh with a hot take about it.
Finally, we found a way to circumvent all those damn awful Patreon takes.
With my poor readings of what they're trying to say. Instead, we'll just say that we now have like a little shop front for merchandise. If you guys want t-shirts and mugs and stuff, you can go to, there'll be a link in the video description below or the podcast below.
We don't want to hear what you have to say. We just want your damn money.
Just buy the stuff. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Just plug that. If you guys want some shirts, we got Hipster Wharf. We've got What Are We Doing Here for the Discovery shirt. We've got the podcast artworks, all that. You can check out Teespring. There'll be a link down below.
Also, I feel like we should make it clear. There is a Jake Sisko Fuck Machine shirt on that site.
Oh, that's out there too. Wear that to your family gatherings, I think. And it'd be a big hit. Guys, or Clay, rather, I guess we should give our final thoughts. We don't really rate these because I think that Discovery is too new for me to rate them. But did you have any final parting wishes or thoughts that you wanted to say?
No, I think overall, I liked the episode. I thought it was a step in the right direction. I agree with a lot of your things you were saying, but I'd rather they go this way for now. Anyway, I should caveat that and say for now, as if they're swinging too far back in the other direction, hopefully that means they will kind of swing back towards the center and really kind of move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would rather this type of episode than almost anything in season 1.
I'd agree. I think that I'm willing to give the show a little bit of time to get its footing in this new world and then sort of really see what it wants to do to branch out a little bit, because the first season was so rough that I do feel they're due a little bit of time to figure things out and maybe just play it safe for a little bit of time. And I'm fine with that. I just think that the frustration from the way that they could have gone with this one, when I thought it was a really great, interesting idea, is kind of a little bit of a letdown. It is a solid episode, though. I don't think there's anything really wrong with the episode, maybe outside of Stamets' decision and stuff like that, and a little bit of weakness on the Pike and Burnham argument. But I think that the bones were there. They just didn't really grab it with both hands.
Can I say one more thing that's really frustrating me about this season so far?
Sure.
I am actively not pissed off, but I'm actively frustrated at how much I like Christopher Pike in this show. Because I feel like for a show, not to get too weirdly, macro political or anything, but like the way that this show was presented initially and all of the weight that was given to the fact that, it's this African-American female lead and, the cast is blah, blah, blah. To have the best character in your second damn season be the white guy,
straight white guy,
is very frustrating for me, because I want those other characters to be the best characters. I want that promise of the show to be realized. But Anson Mount is just so damn charming.
He is. He's good at this. I only like him because he's a straight white male, and that's those are the characters I like to see in my goddamn TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that he's too. I think that's just the problem with making that argument. When you stick to the, like, you have to meet a sort of quota of representation. Not that, like, you obviously should be trying to have as diverse, especially in a series like this. You want diversity, you want different points of view, and you want different people in it. But like, it eventually, if you stick to it too hard, you'll pass up something which is obviously good, which is that Anson Mount is good as Pike here. It's a rotating captain's chair, it seems, for this show. So things are going to change, obviously. And I'd assume that either Burnham or Saru becomes a captain during one season, I would think. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I guess Lorca, Jason Isaacs was there in the first season. It's just that Lorca wasn't nearly as interesting a character as Pike.
No, they were too. So maybe we can talk about this at a later point. But as we get more into Pike, but I think Lorca, they were too obsessed with their twist with Lorca. They didn't actually give Lorca a character because they figured they were looking forward to the twist being the basically creating his character for them, which it didn't do. Yeah, because you're kind of in a position you can't reveal too much about him because the twist will not make sense at that point. Like, you have to keep him hidden. You can't really explore what he thinks too much. Right.
And yeah, they were really dependent on that twist sort of making him into something, and it never ended up doing anything. Yeah. Whereas with Pike, they are actually actively giving him an ethos and a point of view. Yeah. And making him a counterpoint to Burnham, which then makes both of those characters better because they actually have something to do with each other instead of just, Burnham yelling at people or talking strongly at people until they do what she wants them to do. Yeah. And I do want to praise, I do think that their approach so far towards this faith versus reason, or science versus faith, or however you want to look at it, is remarkably subtle. They're really not banging you over the head with this, and both of the characters are still kind of agreeable with each other, even though they have these different points of view that I'm sure will get fleshed out more because we're only getting the tip of the iceberg in terms of what Pike believes, at least. But I can't wait till we find out it's actually Mirror Universe Pike. I know. And then I throw my TV out the window. I think that's it. Sorry, just one more thing about next week. I'm not looking forward to next week's episode because as soon as I saw Georgiou and Klingons, I was like, "Ugh." Although specifically Georgiou, Klingons, and Ash Tyler, I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." Although I felt that way about last week's trailer, and I thought this episode was much better. I feel like they're really adding stuff to the trailers that won't come into play for a little while. It's not like it's next week on Star Trek that they're showing us. Mm-hmm. So maybe they won't overload us with Georgiou and the Klingons all at once, and we'll get something else out of it. We'll see. We'll see. Guys, thank you very much for listening. There's Facebook, Twitter, Discord. Check out those for communications. Buy the t-shirts and stuff at the Teespring. You go to patreon.com/The Pensky File if you want to support the show there and get extra stuff like extra podcasts. We just talked about Sunshine, the 2007 Danny Boyle film. And then I think that's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think we're going to do a Oscar Real Ripe, Real Rotten, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's right. So we'll do the best and the worst of the 2018 Oscar Best Pictures, which is Black Panther at the best, and then Bohemian Rhapsody is the worst. So look forward to that coming out. Yeah. Haven't seen either of them yet. You've seen Black Panther?
I have, yes. I haven't seen
Have you seen Bohemian?
No, not yet.
Okay. I'll be interested. I'm more interested in watching Bohemian Rhapsody, I think, for some reason, but I have not seen Black Panther, and that should be interesting as well. All right, guys, I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back with DS9 on Tuesday, which is we just did Things Past, and then after that, we'll be back with Discovery. So thank you very much. Let me know what you think of the show so far. Are you enjoying the new take on Star Trek Discovery? What do you think of this episode? Until next time, see ya.